Hello, I'm Eric. Welcome back to another episode of From Prison to the Streets. In my last episode, I talked about how I got knocked out for the first time, how I got locked in a shower, how I ended up in the hole for 2 months without a shower, without a phone call, without any contact, from my lawyers. In this episode, I'm going to talk about what happened after they put me back into a pod and how I got a plea agreement. Hopefully I get that far. But yeah, so be sure to like and subscribe. Let's get straight into that. So if you haven't seen the other video, I'll put a thing up so you can go watch it. But they put me back into a pod. I'd been in a fight, been locked in a shower, been knocked out, thrown in the hole, kept me in an observation cell for 2 months. No phone calls, nothing, because they had me branded as a troublemaker at this point. But eventually I got my dad, on the phone, and he called the attorney general's office, called my attorney, called the jail, and they got me back into a pod, the max security pod, because I had a pretty violent crime and I had a high profile case. So that's what happened. But I was in a cell by myself and they kept me locked up all the time. I was only out for maybe 45 minutes a day in the morning so I could get a shower and a phone call. And they did that, one, to punish me, and for two, because they thought that I was a troublemaker. I kept getting into it with people. Well, so there I am in the pod, and I'm watching everybody else run around, play cards, do all their stuff, and have fun and whatnot, and I'm stuck in my cell. I didn't really have my property at this point. They were keeping my property from me, my letters, my commissary, books, stuff like that. I didn't have access to any of that, so I was just stuck in my cell all day. And that was tough. Not gonna lie, that was tough. And the first day I was in there, Ronnie, the guy who knocked me out, came down the stairs and, he said, "Hey, what the fuck are you doing back in here? You're a rat." Well, as I said in my last video, when he knocked me out, I came to. They were picking me up off the floor, and he was screaming about how I was crazy and talking about killing people and all this other stuff. Now, all of that, he shouldn't have said at all. That was, that's something that you don't do, especially a kid who's facing life in prison. Everything that, you say can be used against you in a court of law. Things that other people say that you say, your cellie, if you say something to your cellie, like, yes, I did it, no, I didn't do it, I have violent thoughts, whatever, they can go to your cellie and ask them what you talk about. And they can use that as evidence against you. So he shouldn't have been saying that stuff. And, yeah. Anyway, so he's calling me a rat from behind a closed door. Shouldn't do that anyway. Because if you can't get at someone, why start something? That's some cell warrior shit. But I respect Ronnie, and I'm not calling him a cell warrior. I hollered at my buddy Ramon, only black dude we had in the pod at the time. We live in a rural area, not a lot of diversity out here. I hollered at Ramon and I said, why is he talking shit? And he broke it down for me. I said, all right, well, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write a kite. I want you to take it to him. And he said, all right, cool. So I sit down, I write a kite. Kite in prison is like a little letter or a note or something. And I basically broke down in that kite what I just told you. He shouldn't have been saying what he said. And I wasn't trying to tell on the dude. And he's screaming about how I'm talking about killing people. And, they're asking me what I did and what happened and all this other shit. I just got knocked out. I'm not in my right head yet. I'm groggy still when they pick me up. And I said, well, we got into it and he knocked me out, you know, which was too much. I shouldn't have said that much, granted. But I broke that down to him. I said, look, I wasn't trying to say anything. I just was half asleep. And you're standing there telling the cops that I'm talking about killing people and stuff. You know, what the hell's up with that? I could easily say the same thing about you. I could call you a rat. And put all that in the kite. Ramon took it to him. And about half hour later, well, he went and he sat down in the day room and he was reading it. And every once in a while, he'd look over at me. And he'd kind of smile. And then he'd look back down. And when he was done reading it, he folded it up and he was looking at the TV for a minute. And I knocked on my window and he looked over at me. I said, you know, come on over. And he came over there and he said, you're right. I shouldn't have said anything. You shouldn't have said anything. We're both in the wrong. And he said, I know that you're young. You're 17. You've never been through the system before. You don't know how all this works. And I know what's going on with your medication. You weren't in a good frame of mind and stuff got heated and it shouldn't have. And I said, Ronnie, man, you know I respect you. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid to fight you. At some point, they're going to let me out of this cell. If you want to fight, we can fight. And I'm sure you're going to win, but I'm not afraid of you. And I do respect you. Whether or not we fight or not, I respect you. And I apologize for what I said. I shouldn't have said what I said, but you shouldn't have said what you said either. And I don't know if we can squash this, but I just want you to know where I'm at, and I want you to know that it's nothing personal. What happened shouldn't have happened. And he said, you're right. You know, we were both in the wrong. Things got heated. You were in a bad frame of mind, and you need to calm the fuck down. Because at this point, I was a hothead. Every day thinking that you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison when you're 17 years old, that'll do some stuff to your mind. And it's not good. You know, it weighs heavily on your mind. Anyway, we had that conversation and we walked away from it really good friends. I haven't talked to Ronnie in many years, but he's a really good dude. I have a lot of respect for him. And, you know, I hope wherever he's at, he's doing real good. And I hope he doesn't go back to prison if he got out. I did run into him in prison. I'll talk about that later on, but really cool. He's a really good dude. They kept me in that cell for 2 weeks without my commissary and all that. And it took some serious talking to the jail administrator and stuff to get him to let me out of that cell. Ronnie actually helped me get out of that cell. He talked to him for me. And they moved me in with a guy named Kurt Moore. He was an all right dude. We became really good friends and started hanging out together, working out together in the cell, playing cards together and stuff. And for a while, I just calmed down. I was able to really bring my mind down. Kurt had been to prison before, and he helped me come to terms with some things, you know. You just got to accept it. You can't control it. You know you're going to prison. You might spend the rest of your life in there, but if you have a purpose during that point, and my purpose was pretty simple. I felt that if I could make the people around me, I thought that if I could help people, my experience wasn't bad. You know, what happened to me wasn't in vain. And I deserved to go to prison. I'm not justifying anything that I did ever. I deserved to go to prison. I broke the law. I hurt people. And I deserved to go to prison. Everything calmed down after I accepted it. You know, I didn't get into fights. I didn't get into trouble. Just laid low. Read books, worked out, watched TV, and got through it. Eventually, one day my lawyer came to the jail and he called me out into a room and he said, "Hey, I have good news and bad news." He said, "The good news is they offered you a plea agreement. They're willing to drop all the other charges if you plea no contest or plead guilty to aggravated kidnapping. And the bad news is that's a severity level 1 charge," meaning in the state of Kansas, that's the highest crime that you can get. It's up there with, first degree murder. And he said the bad news is it's a severity level 1 and you could be looking at up to 13 years in prison, or double that if they go for an upward departure. So he said, you think about it, and I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. So I went back to the pod and I talked to Kurt about it. I talked to Ronnie about it. And they said, if you don't take this, you're looking at spending the rest of your life in prison. If you take this plea agreement, you could be looking at 20 years or more. You could be looking at 10 to 13 years. Or if you could get a downward departure, you could do 5 years. It's not ideal, but you can still have a life. You can still get out and be young and still have a life. So they felt that I should take it. They didn't have any reason to offer me a plea agreement, They had all sorts of evidence against me. They had me cut and dry. I talked to my dad about it, and he had mixed emotions on it, but he agreed that it was probably the best that we were going to get. So he felt that I should take it. I felt that I should take it. All my friends felt that I should take it. Next day, I told the lawyer, I'll do it. And that was probably towards the end of October of 2007. And yeah, I took it. I took the agreement. And I signed the paperwork, and they dropped all the other charges. Suddenly, I had a second chance. And my behavior changed completely. I was no longer a kid looking at spending the rest of my life in prison. I could get out when I was, between 20 and 40 years old and have a life. So my behavior changed completely. Felt like I had a second chance and I didn't want to mess it up. At that point, I started making changes for the better. Much more calm, started treating people with more respect. And yeah, that was my turning point. So after that, we got into November. It was around Thanksgiving, and I had bail set at $100,000. So cash assurity, bond, you'd need $10,000. $10,000 to get me out of jail. My dad was older, he's in his 60s. And he felt that he wasn't going to live long enough to see me get out of prison. He didn't feel like he'd have another chance to see me outside of an institution. So he was trying to get the bond money together. He was a truck driver. And he wrecked his truck and got the insurance money for the truck. I think he wrecked the truck on purpose. I can't prove that. He didn't say that was the case, but I think he wrecked his truck on purpose so he could get the insurance money. and bail me out. So right around the end of November, one day they came over my intercom in my cell and they said, "Swanson, pack your stuff." And I said, "Why? Am I moving?" I didn't know what was going on. And they said, "No, you just made bail." I couldn't believe it. I said, "What do you mean I made bail?" They said, "Your dad bonded you out. Your folks are out front waiting for you. Pack your stuff. You're leaving. Do you need any boxes or a trash bag or something?" I said, "Just bring me a trash bag." So I was losing it. I was shaking. I was crying. I couldn't believe it. 17 years old. I didn't think I was going to get to see my folks outside of an institution again. And they just told me that I was leaving. So they brought me my trash bag. I filled it up as fast as I could. All my stuff, I just threw it in there, grabbed my blankets off the bed, and I hit that intercom button because it was after lockdown. And they said, "Yeah, you need another trash bag?" I said, "No, I'm ready to go." They popped my door, and I walked out. They showed me how to get to the lobby because I'd never entered the jail from the front. It was always through booking. And I was dropping stuff. I couldn't even hold on to the bag. And there my dad and mom was in the van there to pick me up. And I gave my dad a great big hug as I was walking through the doors. And we got in the van and he handed me a cigarette. I started smoking at a very young age. And when I was 15, my dad said, "You know what? I know that you smoke. I know you're not going to stop smoking. So instead of you hiding it from me, I'm just going to say you can do it and I'll buy you whatever cigarettes you want so you don't have to steal them and stuff." So my dad knew I smoked and whatnot. And we got in the van and he handed me a cigarette. My mom gave me a great big hug. And I was so happy that I was almost sick. Like I felt like I was going to throw up. I couldn't believe everything that was happening. And my dad took us to a steakhouse. And we ate dinner together. We talked, we laughed, we cried. And then I went home. So that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This has been another episode of From Prison to the Streets. I'm Eric. I'll see y'all later. Break these chains.